World Powers Project. Brazil. Population. Brazil is the largest country in South America. Its official language is Portuguese, the only one in the Americas. The dominant religion is Roman Catholicism. The unemployment rate is 13%. It is 14% rural and 86% urban, and the life expectancy is 62.25 years. Political ideology. Brazil is predominantly politically leftist. They are culturally conservative, however. A lot of regulation, many laws, high taxes, and little return on them, as all public services are administered badly. It is an example of failed socialism, and this can be seen in the health system and education. Government. Federal presidential constitutional republic based on representative democracy. The federal government has 3 independent branches: executive, legislative, and judicial. Federal constitution is supreme law. Head of executive is president, advised by cabinet of ministers. Legislative power is vested upon the National Congress, a 2-chamber legislature that consists of the federal Senate and the Chamber of Deputies. Judicial powers consisting of the Supreme Federal Court, Superior Court of Justice, and National Justice Council, and regional federal courts. And here is some of the main political parties, and you can see the name on the left, and what their main ideologies are, and what position they tend to take on certain issues. And yes. Alright, the economy. They have the 9th largest economy by nominal GDP, and their GDP is 1.796 trillion. They have a mixed economy that relies on import substitution. $21.8 trillion in natural resources, including gold, uranium, iron, and timber. Trade is moderately important to Brazil's economy. The value of exports and imports taken together equals 27% of GDP. The average applied tariff rate is 7.8%. Trade and investment face bureaucratic and regulatory hurdles. The financial sector is diversified and competitive, but the government's involvement remains considerable, and public banks now account for over 50% of total loans in the private sector. Foreign policy. The Ministry of External Relations is responsible for managing the foreign relations of Brazil. Brazil is a significant political and economic power in Latin America and a key player on the world stage. Brazil's foreign policy reflects its role as a regional power and a potential world power, and is designed to help protect the country's national interests, national security, ideological goals, and economic prosperity. They maintain diplomatic relations with every United Nations member state, in addition to Palestine and the Holy See. International affairs. Ethanol use. The United States and Brazil have agreements aimed at increasing ethanol use throughout Latin America and creating a global market for biofuels, but frictions persist about the U.S. tariff on Brazilian ethanol. The 54-cent per gallon tariff protects the U.S. domestic corn-based ethanol industry from Brazilian sugar-based ethanol, which is produced at a lower cost. Though some U.S. legislators have proposed ending the tariff, segments of the U.S. agricultural lobby oppose such a measure. The Brazilian government has threatened to file a complaint with the World Trade Organization if the tariff is not reassessed, but Obama has signaled that he planned to continue the tariff. Experts are split on how serious this disagreement is and what implication it is for the broader relationship. International affairs for trade. On trade, Brazil has often taken a stance that aligns it with other developing nations and places it in opposition to developed countries, including the UN. Brazil's trade policy is not merely about making the nation wealthier, but making the nation more powerful, says Matias Spector, Senior Research Fellow at CPDOC, a Brazilian research center. In Latin America, it strongly opposed a free trade agreement of the Americas and announced its intention to increase trade within the Mercosur bloc of countries. On April 2008, a report from the Wilson Center's Brazil Institute said that Brazil is reluctant to expand its trade relations with the United States and the European Union because it fears that this would conflict with its South foreign policy strategy and potentially alienate its developing world allies. World power. Underlying much of Brazil's activism on the global stage is a belief that it should have more influential role at multilateral bodies like the UN Security Council, the International Monetary Fund, and the G8 group of advanced economies. Brazil would like U.S. support in its bid for a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Military. Brazilian armed forces includes Army, Navy, Marine Corps, and Air Force. They have the 3rd largest military in the Americas. Expanding their presence in the Amazon under the North Corridor program. In 1994, Brazilian troops joined the United Nations peacekeeping forces in 5 countries. Brazilian soldiers have been in Haiti since 2004, leading the UN stabilization mission. The Brazilian military, especially the army, has become more involved in civic action programs, education, healthcare, and constructing roads, bridges, and railroads across the nation. While the military will continue to focus on maintaining internal stability, fighting domestic crime, and contributing forces to international peacekeeping missions, the defense establishment has grown increasingly concerned with border defense. While the military will continue to focus on maintaining internal stability, fighting domestic crime, and contributing forces to international peacekeeping missions, the defense establishment has grown increasingly concerned with border defense. Conflict Resolution International Law. So they have what is called the Brazil Initiative, and this is a CPR project, and its goals are to raise awareness and promote the use of mediation as an acceptable method for resolving disputes, to develop a skilled cadre of mediators in Brazil, to expand CPR's panel of neutrals in Brazil, and lastly, to educate the local community of in-house corporate councils, business associations, private lawyers, and judges on the benefits of alternative dispute resolution methods. Human rights and development. Brazil has a chronic human rights problem, and this includes police brutality, prison overcrowding, torture of detainees, and much more. But they are currently taking many measures to solve these issues after many protests. Counterterrorism. In February, the Rousseff administration won congressional approval for a counterterrorism bill that contains vague language that endangers such basic human rights as freedom of association. The law includes an overbroader definition of terrorism and of actions in preparation of a terrorist act that could be used against peaceful advocacy groups. Human rights, labor rights. Since 1995, the Ministry of Labor has documented almost 50,000 cases of workers being subjected to abusive working conditions that under Brazilian law rise to the level of slave-like, such as forced labor and degrading working conditions. More than 1,000 such cases were documented in 2015. From April 2014 to 2016, the Ministry of Labor imposed penalties on 349 companies for employing 4,119 people in slave-like conditions. Environment. So there's a vast extraction of natural resources is coming at a price for the natural environment. Former Environment Minister Marina Silva resigned in 2008 as she felt that the Brazilian government was prioritizing the interests of big businesses and the economy, and felt that she was fighting a losing battle to protect many of Brazil's natural environment, including the Amazon rainforest. Despite these claims, Brazil has been praised for its environmentally sustainability efforts and attempts to reduce its carbon emissions. The Brazilian government created the Ministry of Environment in 1985, and following this, organizations have been created, such as the IBAMA in 1989, with the aim to protect the natural environment. Brazil has also taken a front seat with regards to global environmental governance by jointly creating the Megadiverse Like-Minded Countries Group, which includes 70% of the world's living biodiversity and 45% of the world's population. The past and the future. So Brazil is the 4th most populous democracy, the 7th world's biggest economy, and they have huge ambitions to be a global power. However, they are very reluctant to open its economy to neighbors, and this may hold them back in the future, but through the past years they have had high economic growth and are on track to be a major global power in the world. Thank you.